Hello everyone, this is Sonya Byers, CEO of Women in Transport, and you're listening to the Women in Transport podcast. Here we uncover how the intersection of identities produces different experiences for different people. While some identities may be more privileged due to their class, race, gender or faith, others may experience inordinate discrimination. Join us as we hear from the Women in Transport and take an inspiring and analytical lens through which we will understand how power and privilege interface and cross over.
Welcome to our podcast. I'm excited that this episode takes us into International Women's Day and Women's History Month. Our guests today will lead us through their career highlights, their career lows, talking about allies that they wish they had or have been themselves or have experienced, and for the aspirations that they are holding for the next generation of transport professionals.
Joining me today, we have...
My name is Hadil. I'm 20 years old and I work for Kier as a civil engineer. So I'm doing a degree apprenticeship and I'm in my second year and I work in the London office.
Hi, I'm Marwa El-Sheemy. I'm the D&I project manager for the infrastructure business unit at Bechtel.
Yeah, so I'm Mel Clark. I'm Health, Safety and Wellbeing Director for National Highways.
Hamilton, Regional Transport Manager for ACS&T Logistics in Wolverhampton.
Hi, I'm Sonya Byers, Chief Executive of Women in Transport.
My name is Marcia Williams. I am the Inclusion and Diversity Change Lead for the whole of customer operations.
Thank you. And Shireen Ali-Khan, Intersectionality Lead for Women in Transport. Let's jump into our first question. So the very first question is around talking us through a time when your career or in your life that you felt that you'd made it. So what kind of themes do you think about when you hear that? When did you feel your best? When you belonged? And what made this time so special? So who wants to jump in with that?
I will.
Thank you.
So I've been with the company that I'm with now for almost 18 months. When I took over October 2021, obviously we'd just come through the pandemic, driver shortage, that kind of thing. So I did wonder after the first couple of weeks what I'd done, because it was a bit of a mess. So over the last sort of 16 months, I've done a lot to change things, built a new team, better relationships with the customers, etc. So last year we were nominated for 2 awards. One was like a cold chain industry award for customer service for our customer bid food. So I had the opportunity to go to Manchester, went to a fancy award ceremony, and which, you know, I've never been to anything like that before. And then in November, we went to the Supply Chain Awards where we won an award for best use of people. And that was in London, very swanky, Park Lane, had the taxi door opened for me. And, you know, it was kind of, yeah, that after sort of 20 odd years in the business, I really felt part of something and that we've achieved something. So I know it was only a short time, but yeah, I think probably that's when I'm stood on the stage with my award and a big grin on my face. I think that's, yeah, it's a good feeling.
That's lovely. Thank you for sharing that. And congratulations as well. Amazing. Who wants to go next? Any stories that resonate with that?
Yeah, mine definitely. So I think something about getting awards is so wonderful for that feeling of recognition, isn't it? And so I had a great year last year because 2 things happened that kind of really made me feel as though I'd made it. So I won the Diversity Champion Award for the Chartered Institute of Transport and Logistics. Try saying that with all your teeth in. And that was, I mean, I have to say it was an absolute career highlight because equality, diversity, inclusion has always been something I've done off the side of my desk a little bit, you know, alongside my day job, but I'm really passionate about it. So to get an award for something that you're really passionate about and is kind of part of the reason why you turn up to work, and was really exciting. And of course, the organisation National Highways made a big fuss about it when I got it as well. It was rather embarrassing, actually. I kind of turned up for senior leadership day, and my picture was plastered on page 1 of the pack, you know, and that's like I was on a train to London dialing in thinking, oh my God. But it did give that fantastic sense of recognition for things that you work really hard at and you really care about. It's better than reward. It's actually better than reward, isn't it? You know, so it's not about the salary. It's not about, you know, it's not about necessarily the job title, but being recognised for something that you really care about and that you've really worked at and you really contributed to, is you know, that really resonates with me, Fee. That's absolutely how I felt when I was holding that. It's like, oh my God, I've made it. You know, it's actually literally that. Oh my God, I've made it. But last year I did get this job as well, the job that I'm in now for National Highways. I'm the Health, Safety and Wellbeing Director. And if anybody had told me 18 years ago when I started my career with National Highways that I would end up being the company's Health, Safety and Wellbeing Director, I would have just said, well, no, how's that ever going to happen in a million years? So again, that was another sort of pinch me moment. So 2022 was quite a big year for me in that, that kind of feeling that you really belonged, that you're part of something, you know, part of the organisation, an important part of the organisation, being given quite an important job in the organisation, was a real kind of I've made it moment as well for me.
I guess hearing Mel and Fiona, I guess I can kind of build on a little bit, because I guess my highlight is quite recent as well, and I think it's something I've always had a concern growing up, that you had to choose between your career and your personal life, and family is something I've always valued. And I took on the role I'm in now as the D&I project manager about a year ago, coming back from maternity leave, and I actually, you know, I've managed to progress within the organisation. My career wasn't stunted, and I guess for me, it was a real proud moment to see that I actually you can have both, and you know, having the organization, you know, Bechtel support me, you know, with being able to utilize a flexible working policy and things like that. So I think for me, it's a real highlight, and similar to Mel, it's something that I've always enjoyed doing. So it's almost like that, a job that you love, and being able to manage both between the personal and work life has been a real highlight for me. So, yeah.
So I think my experience is like kind of different to everyone else's, because I'm still like very early on in my career, so I don't like have any awards or anything like that. But I think the main thing that made me feel like I was part of a community and where I felt like I belonged was like going to events and things like that, and like seeing other people in the same position as me, and like talking to people like everyone on this podcast, all of you guys. I think that like you feel like a sense of community, like you're not alone and you do belong, and that's how I felt like I've made it. And then also with my actual job, like getting more responsibility with tasks and jobs and projects. I think that's the main thing, because early on, and when I first started, I was given like very easy tasks, and I think more as I've like progressed onto my role, I've been given a lot harder tasks, and it's like nice to know that like I'm trusted with that as well. So yeah,
that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
So for me, I've got a different story. So I've been with Transport for London on the 10th of March next month for 43 years, and I've had trials and tribulations. Wow. Oh, thank you. Are you saying I look good for my age?
Yeah, very.
That's longer than a lot of marriages. That's what I was thinking.
So I have a couple of things I want to say, right, where I felt that I've made an impact. So during the 43 years, right, at this moment, I am the most senior Black female within operations, and I hold that dearly to my heart. The struggles I'll go through, that I think that's in another question which is coming up soon. So my greatest achievement for me when I reached general manager for the operational role, despite all the things like you're dyslexic, you can't read, you can't this, right? You're a woman, you should be cleaning people's, excuse my language, crap off people's shoes. So I've had to fight all that. But when the struggle that I've gone through, right, and the performance that I've turned around through engagement, listening, understanding, sometimes, you know, you have to have a conversation about behaviors and things like that. And then when I've given the general manager, that said to me is that they trusted me. And when I was given the information in a cafe, I had to kiss the man who told me, because I couldn't believe it. So that is the biggest transformation for me, because again, and you know, may have to edit this, right? The crap that I went through the years to get general manager was unbelievable. You know, the sexism and, you know, the racism, you know, the neurodiversity side of it. Well, you're thick, you can't read, you can't write, you shouldn't get that role. And then to be given it again, and I'm harping on, it was a testament to me, say, yes, Marcia, you've made it. Then the story goes, right, so I've been in the operational role for many, many years, like 25 years. We just had a reorganization where they were changing the model. And we were told that we had to reapply. And at the time I was told that I wanted the job. But then doing some internal reflection over the years and all the challenges that I went through, I said to myself, do I want to do that again? So I did all the presentation, right, went into the interview, I was flatter than a pancake. And then when I came out, you know, you have that reflection, oh, I should have said this, I didn't say this, oh my God, I didn't have that. The next day I was flying out to America for 4 weeks. And on the plane, it said, Marcia, why so calm, which said to me, right, I've had my time. I've had my time in operations, right, it's time to move on. So I enjoyed my 4 weeks, first time ever, without anything what's happening at work, etc., etc. And then when I came back, my boss rang me and said, Marcia, you didn't get the role. Now, most people would have said, what? Hey, how? I didn't say anything. Didn't bother me at all. And this is where the greatest point came from. But however, like, for the role that you have done over the 43 years, particularly around inclusion and diversity and bringing humanity into the company, like, through our people, making sure that our people are fit, feel comfortable, you know, open conversations. They gave me this role because if you do the inclusion bit, the diversity automatically comes along. So when they gave me that role, which was specifically made for me, that's another highlight, because they then recognize in me that I can have conversations which are open and honest. Sometimes they could be touching a nerve, but they recognize in me that I can bring change within Transport for London. So that's me.
Thank you. I think that's amazing, and kudos to you, because you know, we've all been on a career journey, but it's that resilience, not letting it stop you, and you know, the fact that everyone's going to mention a few words, and I'll kind of go into that in a second. I want to let Sonya tell us her story, but what I've picked out from what you've just said is around the trust that you've been given, the fact that actually you kept your resilience and you've gotten into the position that you know is impactful, you know it's right for you, you know what's right for the people of the business, because you've got the experience, but also you've got the foresight to see and be able to have those conversations. And touching a nerve is part of it. Actually, we can sit, Brené Brown I think was saying, it's about sitting in your discomfort. It's okay to do that, because that's how we move further forward. And so being able to do it in the space of love, I think that's the difference, isn't it? That's when we make people feel they belong into that conversation, but we can move together into a new space. So no, I really love that. Thank you. And Sonya, over to you. Tell us about your career highlights and kind of, you know, when did you feel at your best?
Yeah, I've had lots of different jobs, and about, I think I said this the other day, about 10 different jobs in 10 years, but not in different companies necessarily. And I've been really fortunate actually that although there have been challenges and lows in there, I've had that feeling of feeling like I was at my best and belonging several times, which is a real privilege. And I was reflecting on this question and thinking, what was it that created that feeling and made me feel that way? And I think it's when, you know, you feel that trust from the people you're working with, you feel like you're making a difference. And so for me, that felt like I was really delivering in a way that was being recognized. And that's when I felt like, yeah, everything's just coming together. And what Hadil said about finding community and the sense of belonging really resonated with me, because when I joined Women in Transport, it was like a missing piece of a puzzle for me, in that I, you know, really found this community that now I've been part of for 15 years, where I could just be myself, and I felt really heard and safe and listened to. And I guess when I think now, what makes me feel that I've made it is if I meet other members who have that same feeling when they join Women in Transport. And that makes me feel like, yeah, actually what we're doing is making a difference, and what I do now is making a difference.
So I'm going to jump in there. When I first met Sonya, the first thing that stood out to me was that beautiful smile, the engaging eyes. And, you know, we was having a conversation. I can't remember what it was about. And then I said to her after, I am so proud of her reaching the, you know, the heights of CEO. And I'm going to say this, but I don't think she realized how influential she is as a CEO for women. And the one thing I want Sonya to do, and I keep saying it to her every time, she's got to shout. All of us have got to shout at the top of where we've got through the struggle. So please, Sonya, I love you like cook food. Keep shouting. Moving onwards.
Thanks, Marcia. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I love that. Thank you. So for me, hearing you all speak, and there's a few kind of key words that have come out, where you've spoken about community, network, safety, trust, recognition. And I think when I think about the time where I felt my best, almost belonging, and not too dissimilar to you, Sonya, I've done a lot of contracting work. So I've been really proud to say that I've worked on a lot of the major projects. And for me, I used to, in my younger career, really kind of hook that onto my kind of validity and what made me of worth. I was like, well, I've worked at this place and I've worked on this project, genuinely because the work was impactful. And I've been really privileged that the work I felt has generally helped communities, people who use those services, people who are affected by those major projects. So I feel happy in that sense. But what I didn't ever do was think about, well, what's my part in this? What's Shireen as a human being? What's her part in this? And I felt like, I think similar to you, Marwa, it was a separation between the work life and the kind of the human life. And it got to a certain point where I took a sabbatical. When I came back, I was like, well, what does Shireen want? And actually, I'm not just my work, I'm lots of things. And Women Transport has actually been really integral to this, because soon after coming up to my sabbatical, I joined as a member and volunteer. And I feel like there's a real power of networks, and there's a real thing about being in a women's network, which I never thought early part of my career I'd see the value in that. Actually, I always thought it was a thing, but I happen to be, I'm a transport professional. I wouldn't say I'm a female transport professional, but actually the older I've gotten, the more I've realized that it is the value of a network, regardless of what that is. But the similarities that we have, there's such a power in having allies there, and those allies come in different ways. I've got very close friends and mentors and coaches who are male, one person in particular who I've known for many years and always speaks about me when I'm not in the room. And so for me, that's been a real value. And we'll come on to allyship in a minute, so I don't want to kind of steal my own thunder there. But for me, that's when I felt I belonged. It's around the energy and the people that are around me, and how that's made me deliver my best work. And that isn't always about the project that you're on, or the paycheck at the end of it. It actually is about, well, how do I sleep at night? And for me, they've been the best moments. But those key words are really important, and I want to ask a kind of supplementary question to the main questions for today. What does safety mean for everyone here? Because I know you mentioned it about being safe, and I really want to pick on that. What does that mean in the workspace?
For me, it's about, being able to explore ideas and talk to people in a really open way, knowing that there isn't any judgment. It's almost this, we can say, maybe we say the wrong thing in the moment, but actually that can be welcomed, and that you can have a conversation about it, and an open conversation. It's not coming from judgment. It's coming, to use your Shireen, coming from a place of love, because you have that trust in your team and you have that honesty. So it's almost that psychological safety beyond other types of aspects.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the only kind of word I would add is maybe being comfortable. So I think it's like you said about being able to say what's on your mind without having to filter, because you know that the team understands your intentions, and it's being able to kind of build that rapport with the team. And I think that's so important, just kind of making the team feel like they can just be themselves rather than pretend to be something that they're not. I think that's a really good form of teamwork.
For me, safety is safety without judgment. Yeah. So as you've seen in my previous reiteration, I said, crap, I feel safe to say how I feel and the things that I'm going through. For me, that's a safe environment. But I like what Shireen said, right? We have to create a space where it is safe, Yeah, for people to say what they want to say and how they want to say it, but make sure that they are comfortable and supported when they say what they say. So that's me, that's safety.
No, I agree, and the word psychological safety, I think, is the kind of the way to frame it. So you said something earlier, Marcia, about sort of bringing humanity into the company, and there's no mistaking how influential that is in an organisation in creating that psychological safety, I have to say, and that's where you make the difference. You know, whatever our individual struggles are, and I suspect we've all had them around the table one way or another, and I'll certainly come on to my lowlights shortly. So that hasn't all been a smooth journey to the role that I find myself in. But one of the things that I have been able to do, because I've had a lot of opportunity in National Highways and I've capitalised on it. So I've had a number of sort of senior director posts in the organisation, but I have used that sort of influence to make sure that it creates that psychological safe space for all of our people in the organisation. That's just really important to me, and saying it as you're seeing it. And if the word crap is the word that you want to describe how you felt about certain things and how you feel about certain things, you absolutely should be safe to say it. And actually, it's some of those things, it's those provocative ways of describing things, the objectives that we use sometimes, that really make an organisation sit up and take notice. Because quite often, if we're trying to put it in the corporate speak of the organisation that we're working in, they're just not hearing it. It's not raising itself as something different. And actually, you make the difference by sort of pointing out the difference, by being safe to use different words, to speak in a different language to the organisation, which is challenging. It is challenging for the organisation to have somebody that speaks, or people within it that speak with a different voice. But all organisations need that difference to work well, to be creative, to be successful. So definitely your word of humanity and bringing that into the organisation, that really resonated with me massively.
Also, I think we have to be authentic. Yeah, so as I say, when we set up objectives, we don't talk this lovely plumbing mouth and all this nonsense, right? But we do never ever check in. Do you understand what I've just said? But if you bring your authenticity with you and your intent, people can lock onto that and say, okay, right, I understand her, right? She is a human being. And then you can manage, through the quagmires wherever you're going.
Absolutely.
I think that's right. I think I'm glad, Mel, that you categorise it as psychological safety. And for me, we have the opportunity to hide behind a lot of businessy terms. And I feel like unless you're embedded in the work around wellbeing, EDI, etc., a lot of it they're just words. And I think, Marcia, when you said about humanity, I think people will get that, because we are all human beings. I know it sounds really obvious, but when you take the intention behind that, we're all flawed. We've all got issues. We've all, maybe didn't have enough sleep or didn't eat, or, we've got busy days. We've all got the same stuff, regardless of your background, your gender, your class. We all come from a lot of similarities. And I feel like the more we talk about looking out for each other and just helping the business to thrive by helping people to thrive, I feel like then we will start making shifts, because it's great to have new words for stuff, but I feel like there's an opportunity to get lost behind the words. Fee and Hadil, do you want to come in on the safety side of things?
Yeah, I think I agree with pretty much everything everyone said. What I'd like to add is, I think safety for me is being, same as what Marwa said, just being comfortable around everyone to make mistakes, and just to be understood, maybe your background, or like you said, if you haven't slept or you're having any issues that are affecting your work life, maybe. So I think, yeah, that's the main thing.
Thank you. Fee?
It's a difficult one, I think, for me, because right now I don't feel that at all, not even a little bit. So it's difficult to kind of speak about that in a positive way. Yeah, it's we're going through a merger at the minute with another company, and it's all kind of happening in the north, where our head office is, and I'm down in Wolverhampton a little bit on my own, and there's no other kind of managers at my level down here, so it can be quite sort of tough, and I don't feel very safe actually at the minute. So yeah, it's a little bit difficult to be positive about that.
You felt the lowest in your career, what made it a hard time, and what would have made it a better time for you? So just kind of bearing that in mind, and obviously if you feel comfortable, what could make this a better time? That's an opportunity. And yeah, if anything sparks out of that, I might ask some kind of follow-up questions as it goes. But I know, Mel, you said you had some things there, and I'm sure others have.
I thought, and actually it jumps off really nicely about kind of times when you felt unsafe, and I don't know what these experiences are, and she may choose to share them with us, but my lowlights were certainly at that period when I felt unsafe. So Marwa, you mentioned sort of highlights being sort of getting that work-life balance and being able to kind of come back from maternity leave and kind of really settle back into role. Well, my experience when I had my 3 maternity leaves was completely different, and you know, that was a time when I kind of felt quite unsafe really in my career, and actually kind of where was that going to go. I actually kind of was going to leave National Highways at one point. I love working for National Highways. I'd have to, having put in 18 years here, because I genuinely believe in what the organisation does and the service that it provides. But at one point, after my 3rd maternity leave, I was definitely feeling though there was no place for me in this organisation beyond the role that I had. And I'd started as an operations manager. In operations, I'm operations through and through. I used to wear a uniform, and you know, I used to look after traffic officers out on the strategic road network, and that was my day job. But obviously I'd got ambitions, I'd got potential, I wanted to do other things, and I genuinely felt as though I was being not actively blocked, but the way that the culture was in the organisation, the way that things were done, in terms of you know, recruiting and promoting people was getting in the way of people, and women in particular, and maybe women of colour, kind of achieving any opportunity. So when I looked up, I just saw a sea of, you know, white middle-aged men, quite frankly, both the next level up from me, and then if you looked further on to senior teams and the executive and the boards, that's kind of what I was seeing. There were 1 or 2 women, but they didn't look like me. And it was I felt, well, I'm going to have to leave this organisation. It was a real low light, and during my maternity leave in particular, there were 2 jobs that came up that were promotions that would have been ideal for me. And in fact, I'd been deputising into both of those roles before I went on maternity leave, but nobody once thought, God, we've got Mel over there who's done the job. You know, we've given her the money to do the job for a year, and then actually the job's actually come up. At no point did anybody think, well, we'll reach out to her and actually she should come and she should come and fill that role. And it was a big sort of wake-up call. There's 2 things that kind of happened to me really. There's a bit that made me kind of get up and fight and go, for God's sake, you know, if this organisation doesn't want me, I'm going to go and find another one that does. And that happened almost immediately. So I went, applied for another job, got offered one almost instantly, and I went, oh gosh, wow, I can, you know, I am right for these opportunities. And the other thing that happened was I thought, no, I think I'm going to stay and fight. And actually not just for myself, although I had a really great line manager and had a great conversation where clearly they sort of said, no, we've missed a trick here and we don't want you to go. But the other thing that I really wanted to make sure happened was that no other woman in the organisation felt that, because I felt really lonely for a long, I feel emotional thinking about it, for a long time. So you may know I set up the Leading Women's Network in National Highways, and it was a long time ago, 2013, 14 when it set up. But exactly so that other people could at least have somebody to talk to about it. That was its initial intent. It's gone on since then to be a much bigger and much braver thing. And I don't chair it anymore. There's bigger and braver women than me chairing it and doing fantastic things. It's been fantastic to hand the baton on. But that all came from that real low light during my career.
What a legacy from something that was clearly not a nice time for you. You've been able to then impact and support other women who hopefully won't go through the same thing. So amazing there. Would anybody else like to speak about the lowest times and what could have made it different, perhaps?
So I guess for me, I mean, it's quite interesting because I think sometimes, yeah, your low times you remember sometimes even more prominently than your highlights. So I think for me, it was very early in my career. So it was actually even before I entered, started working for Bechtel. It was when I was an intern, actually. I was doing an internship, so many, many years ago. And I wasn't so confident. So my background's civil engineering, and I was doing a structural design internship, and I was given quite a straightforward task, and we were presenting to external customers, and within the meeting, this external customer completely ignored, I guess, I was the one presenting, but whenever he was asking questions, they were directed at my supervisor. And anytime, I guess, I tried to kind of come forward and provide a response, he was asking the supervisor, and actually it got to a point where he was addressing him by name. So it was almost like, can you stop talking? So it was, for me, such a low point, because I guess at that point I started doubting myself. So it was a big kind of self-doubt in terms of, am I meant to be an engineer? Is this the right job for me? Is this the right workplace for me? And I guess it did take me a long time to gain that confidence in terms of even just presenting. So it's not just the technical side, it's also, the presenting and kind of speaking up for yourself. And when I think back to it, and it links a little bit to what Mel was saying about how you don't want anyone else to go through that experience once you've gone through, an experience like that, I feel quite passionately about trying to ensure that that doesn't happen for others. But I think the key thing that I find is if my supervisor at the time in this internship that I had done had potentially stood up or said something within the meeting, it would have been a completely different situation. So it's interesting how that's what I remember, as opposed to the actual external, person who was kind of showing me this behavior. And that's why I always kind of, in my role, and try and encourage people to speak up. And if you see someone who's unable to kind of speak up themselves, and you should be the one to kind of step in where possible, because like I say, this was before I even joined Bechtel, but I still remember that incident as if it was yesterday. And also I potentially wouldn't have stayed in the industry, but I guess I just decided to kind of persevere, like many others on this call, through those situations.
Say it took you time to then get to the position, almost like having a leap after that experience. And you're right to say that for so many people, they might not have had that resilience to then keep going, or that drive to give it another go. And when you look at the stats around people leaving kind of STEM careers in general, I know we're very transport specific today, but we know that we've got fewer women in the industry as it is. And then we're looking at people that are leaving. And there's been loads of stats recently actually talking about women in C-suite positions across various sectors who are then walking out for many different reasons. And you think, well, it has to start from somewhere. There have to be some behaviors that are allowing for these things to happen. And I think, as an intern, having experienced that, and the fact that it's sat with you, and there is a stat where it's like for every like 4 or 5, I'm sure it's a high number actually, but it's like every 19 positives, 1 negative will like just completely thrash it out, like something ridiculous like that. It's very, very high. And that shows you actually, you said that was a while ago, but that still sticks with you. And if somebody had just called it out and said that's not right, it might have ended up completely different. I find that really telling. Would anybody else like to talk about their not so great moments?
I think the first time I ever felt like really down about something that happened to do with work was, I think I was like 2 months in to my job. So I didn't have like any prior knowledge to civil engineering, or like I barely knew anything basically. I didn't study engineering in sixth form. it was a massive jump from sixth form to my job, and it was like completely unrelated because I didn't do engineering, like I said. So I was meant to complete a report and I was struggling with it. So I didn't really, like, a lot of the terms I wasn't really familiar with, and I didn't know what they meant. So I tried, like I still attempted to complete a draft report, and I showed it to one of my supervisors, and we were on the meeting, and like I was sharing my screen, and he was just like completely like shocked. I don't think he wasn't my line manager, so he didn't really know. I don't think he knew that I was like I had just started. So he was like so angry. He was just like being really rude and like condescending. And like I remember I was trying to like ask him questions on like certain words, and then he, like I think the call was 2 hours. So for that 2 hours, I was asking questions, and he was just like, he made me feel like really stupid for not knowing what these words meant and not knowing like what I'm supposed to put in which section. And I remember after that meeting, like I was so affected by it because it was like 2 hours of him just like going at me, and I literally just broke down after that meeting, and it was really like upsetting, like now thinking about it. But I think I've come a long way since then. And I think relating to the next question as well, which is about allies, one of my friends from uni, I told him about it. I think he called me after the meeting as well, and he helped me through the report. So he couldn't do it either because he was still like new as well. So he told me to message my line manager and tell him that, you know, I couldn't complete it. Another thing as well about like people like leaving as well. So that friend from uni, he left, and that was like, it was not a nice experience because I was fairly close with him as well. So I think one of the main things as well is people that like you have relationships with and you form close relationships with and bonds with, and they leave. So like obviously, you know, go to different companies, different roles, things that are better for them. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question. If you were in that situation now, you're having that call with your supervisor, what would you do differently now? Now you have got the hindsight and you've had that negative experience, how would you behave?
I think I would still behave the same way. I think I wouldn't really confront him about it because I didn't really ever confront him about it. But I would do the same thing. So I'd go to my line manager, talk to them about it. And then, you know, I have that trust with the line manager. I think it's important to have someone or a couple of people that you work with, like that trust of them to go to them if you have any issues, if you have any problems, you can trust them with that. You can, you know, like you trust them to take care of you and support you. I think that's it's a very important thing to have. I think without that, it wouldn't be like a good experience. It would be awful.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm obviously sorry that you went through that. One of the things I feel like you're probably touching upon is around like having an adequate process, because we'll always touch on allyship in a moment to really kind of, you know, dive deeper into that. But I'm really passionate about having like governance around allyship and around mentorships. I think this, you know, because whenever you've got a position of control anywhere, there should be some governance around it. But also I'm really passionate about allowing people the opportunity to call stuff out. And, you know, you can call it whistleblowing, that's quite a strong term, but if we just say calling it out, but having appropriate ways to do that, because you might not always feel okay to confront the person in the situation, and that's okay. The burden shouldn't always be on us to just fix stuff, but there should always be governance and processes that is there to look after people and fix the stuff. So that's kind of why I like probed you a little bit further on that.
Yesterday, coming in knowing that this was happening today, and my partner, we were talking about it last night, and yeah, I was quite nervous. I do kind of get imposter syndrome, you know, because some of you guys on here are sort of directors and, you know, that kind of thing, and I'm just a lowly transport manager. But
no, don't even think that. But
I think one of the biggest things for me, and it's a phrase that's only come about in the last few years, but the gaslighting that you get from middle-aged white men in this industry is just phenomenal. It's like I obviously have the added bonus of being gay, and I'm very conscious that I don't come across as like some man-hating lesbian, you know, because that kind of bothers me a little bit, because, you know, I want, you know, to kind of stick up for the cause, but also I'm conscious of that too. But I have worked in some horrific situations in my sort of career. The sexism, the way women are spoken about, And I think sometimes because, you know, I am, you know, gay and I look the way I do, I think that sometimes men think it's okay for them to speak like that in front of me. So there's been, you know, sort of situations where I read on a forum, one of the places that I worked at, it was like a driver forum, and they were asking about, oh, what's it like to work there or whatever, and it was where I was working, and a comment was kind of made saying, oh, it's all right apart from the man-hating lesbian in the office. So I was like, okay, interesting. And interesting, I didn't recognise him either, so I don't know who he was, but must have been somebody that came in just for the day or whatever. But yeah, I guess with those experiences, yes, it has been better in the last 18 months. It's the first time I've had, you know, my own team, and, you know, my line manager's very, you know, he doesn't micromanage me, lets me get on with it. And, you know, I've obviously made some kind of impact, which is great. But I think just going through this tough period with the merger and everything's a bit uncertain and that kind of thing. But yeah, I guess sort of like people will come to site and they will go to the shift managers. I'm the senior on site, but because I'm kind of, you know, the woman just sat, you know, in the transport office, and it's the shift managers to go to because they're men, and they, you know, it's just, yeah, it's tough, and you just wonder why you bother sometimes. So yeah, it can be quite difficult. I don't think I've got to that level in my career, sort of thing, where, you know, I don't have any female kind of almost like role models or mentors, and I never really have in the companies. I mean, I worked for DHL for 11 years, and that's a company that you know promotes you know work-life balance, D&I, and, you know, all that kind of thing. But they're good at talking the talk but not walking the walk. It's okay, I've got lots of nice leaflets and pens and stuff like that, but, you know, the reality of it, day-to-day operation is a lot different. Yeah. So
the angry lesbian comment, I saw everyone's faces, everyone equally winced, because that's like, I feel like I feel angry. I'm sure the others feel the same on your behalf, because that's a horrible thing to have to go to and have to go through in the workplace. And there's all these stereotypes and perceptions about women, and like, why is it okay? Like, why is it okay to gaslight females? Why is it okay to talk about sexuality that openly in the workplace? And if it's your own, that's slightly different, but, you know, why is it okay to speak about our faith and our race in such derogatory terms? And it just be okay because it's just the sector, it's just how we do stuff. It's 2023. You know, it should never have been okay, but definitely not now. Like, what the hell's going on?
Definitely.
I definitely listen to that, and you just feel kind of sad and frustrated, don't you? Like, it's no better, it's no better. But in places it is better, and I think there's something about each organisation having to have it called out to them, and I know that's really difficult for you because you find yourself a lone female in an environment, and that is why I get so emotional. I think, oh God, I remember feeling like that, and it is hard. It's hard to stick your head above the parapet and say that is not acceptable. And actually, do you as an organisation want to be the type of organisation where this behaviour sorts of exists? So the real challenge is finding a way to help the organisation have the mirror held up to them. And I know that's so tough. I'm sure, Marcia, when you were talking earlier, you really remind me of a lady who recently sadly passed away in National Highways, who called this out in our organisation as well. She was so like you. And it's hard, and it's a fear, isn't it? It's the fear, because don't forget, women have all the same motivations as men. So we're not just motivated because it's just about our career. We've got motivations because it's about money and it's about dependency. When it was happening to me, I was the main breadwinner in our house, you know, so it was the fear of taking another job and opportunity somewhere else because this one wasn't quite working for me. It was, oh, am I dealing with my vanity here, or am I putting bread on the table? And those are choices that, you know, we as human beings have to make when we're thinking about our careers. So our motivations aren't just, it's all about equality, it's all about an equal playing field. Those are part of the motivations. Some of it's just practical stuff, like, you know, I need to earn some money, and I need to be in part of the competitive market force because I need to bring in the bacon because I've got 3 kids, you know. So so it is hard, and I absolutely do feel where you are, because I've been there myself. What I will say is it is hard to speak out, but you will never, I shouldn't make any promises here that I can't keep, but I've never regretted, in fact, I've never looked back since the day I decided enough was enough.
Yeah.
And that I would stay with National Highways and I would call it out for the organisation. I found a way to do it respectfully. I found the ears of senior leaders. I said to them, do you really want this organisation to be like this? And of course they pushed it back on me to set up the network. You know, I mean, I didn't set up the network because I was a nice, kind person. I set it up because it needed doing and nobody else was going to do it. And the answer I got back when I was challenging the organisation was, well, if you're so bothered about it, love, not quite those words, but not far off, you sort it out. Well, actually, fine, you've given me the mandate to call it out, so that's what I'm going to do. And being part of these sorts of conversations are really powerful, because what you're doing is you're calling it out. You're just being able to air this podcast and say, actually, we need to just call it out in organisations. So important. I mean, I went on my journey, God, it's getting on for 10 years ago now. And I think it's really influenced the way that the organisation looks at diversity and inclusion. I don't think some of the behaviours that you're describing would happen now in National Highways. I'd hate to think so. And I think people would have the mechanisms now to be able to say that's unacceptable and it doesn't happen around here. But 10 years ago, we probably couldn't have said that. 10 years ago, probably putting women in the same position that you find yourself in now.
Yeah.
Maybe just to build on that, but if they're because it is really hard being an only and being the ones that are calling out. I mean, I remember being a younger engineer working in an engineering consultancy and being one of the very few women, and having, you know, being surrounded by male colleagues and then showing their page 3 across my desk and thinking, oh, come and look at this over the top of my shoulder. I'm like, is that appropriate? And talking about, you know, what other women were wearing in meetings and the advantages over stockings versus tights and when they were going to go to the strip club. And, you know, I called it out because I was like, well, I don't want, and there was a director in the same row as me. And I went down there and I was like, I don't find this behaviour acceptable. And it was really scary to do that at the stage of my career. And I, you know, did worry about what the consequences were, but actually they dealt with it and they called it out. And actually, when those things were happening again, they were then upstanding and said, no, that's not okay. So you may find you may have more allies than you think.
Yeah. I mean, I do think it has got better. Definitely. I mean, obviously I run this transport department, so it isn't happening here. So, you know, but that's why we need more women, clearly. But yeah, it is better because I think, like you say, because there's a lot of focus on it at the minute. People are you know, calling us woke and all that kind of thing because, so in the 25 years, you know, that I've kind of been in the industry, it has gone from, it's got better, but there's still a long way to go. Yeah.
But hopefully you found a group of 7 women who you can call on for support as well. Can I talk about something, maybe it will help in terms of that time when I felt at my lowest, coming off a really high in my career, but where actually having that community support for women in transport made a huge difference. So it really resonated with me, Phoebe. You said, like 18 months, you know, you're on this kind of career high almost, and then you're going through this period of uncertainty. I've actually had that where I was working in it was a recruitment company actually, but I've been working there for 4 years. I've been promoted twice. I've been a high flyer. I've been on, you know, chef's table at Marcus Waring's restaurant. Really, you know, excelling in that job. Been promoted to an associate director. Had just delivered a really big project, you know, sort of on time, on budget, all of those things, smashing all my targets. Came back from a 3-week holiday, and we had been going through a lot of merger and acquisition stuff as well, and the team had gone from 26 globally to 6. This is them reporting to me, and but had been given assurances that the job was safe and blah blah blah. Anyway, came back off this 3-week holiday, had an email from my managing director saying, "Oh, can we have a catch up at 5 o'clock?" So yeah, sure. Walking down the stairs, he won't make eye contact with me, so ask me questions. This is strange. I walk into a room, there's a HR person there. I'm like, okay, you're making me redundant. He wouldn't answer me directly, but said, this is a pre-meeting making you, to formally notifying you that you're being made redundant. Because apparently you can't do, we want to put, basically they wanted to create a new role, and they didn't think I was technically competent to do that role and to manage a team and do things, all the things that I was actually doing. I was like, oh, okay. And so this pre-meeting resulted in me being taken back to my desk after emptying my everything out, and it escorted out of the office, and my passport taken away.
Yeah.
So with no notice.
Oh my goodness.
Actually, you know, you have like all your shoes under your desk, bags. I'm like, oh, I need to carry a bag. And there were people, you know, being a recruitment office, there were people in the office, and my team was still there. I'm like, what's going on? And I was like, oh, I'm leaving. So, you know, quite sudden, quite abrupt. And I went out for a couple of drinks with those colleagues. But you know what? My first email out the next morning was I was part of the Women in Transport board there as a volunteer, was to that board saying, oh, by the way, my email address is changing, just been made redundant. Don't know what's next, but keep you posted. And do you know what? It was like a warm hug, because immediately offers of coffee, offers to like, what can we do to help? Within days, I was meeting for coffee with Rachel Skinner, who's our patron now and who's our past president, and talking about, you know, what's the possibilities of job here, could create something, you know, lots of conversations. I managed to, through my network, ended up with some of the people who'd left that same company, reaching out to me, and actually from the realizing that I had done a good job there, that I had built a network, that I had, you know, Ian Smith, who's one of our brilliant Women in Transport allies, says, you know, keep your receipts. And it was definitely that moment where I realized that actually all the work that I'd done and the networking and the delivering on the projects made a difference, because I ended up getting a freelance project with one of the former directors. Another director connected me with somebody from his team who ended up getting me a contract job somewhere else. So within 2 weeks, I had a freelance contract. Within a month, I had a brilliant job with a facilities management company, which I loved. I had an amazing time. I worked for an incredible boss who absolutely just gave trust and just helped me rebuild my confidence in myself. And most of all, Women in Transport was just this warm blanket around me. So just to say, even though this might feel like a really uncertain time, actually everything you've achieved in the last 18 months will stand you in good stead, and you can take that with you wherever.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Sonya. Marcia, tell us
So
about
my
I know, I've saved it till last.
my love life. Wow. Okay. So when I joined the company, as you can see, I'm a female, woman, whatever you want to call me. She, he, her, whatever. Guess my title was Railman.
Yes.
So then Helena Relman. But anyway, Marcia didn't know anything, carried on. Then guard train operator had a baby, came back. The only job they had for me was cleaning toilets. So I said, hey, ho, I'll take that. Then moved up the ladder, became a revenue control inspector, a very good one, by the way.
No doubt.
Yep. Went to duty station manager, right? Second time I got the role, but the choice between two black females, one who had a master's and me who had nothing because of my dyslexia, I didn't get any grades, etc., etc. So they decided like to give us both the roles, and everybody was boasting about this other girl. Oh, she has a master's, right? And she can do this, and she can project manage this and all this stuff. Obviously, I was pissed off at the flipping time, but guess what? The one without a master's, any education, right, did Bakerloo line proud. The other one they had to sack. Then I needed more experience, right? Because that's when the career aspiration to climb the ladder, right, really came in. So I had to move from the Bakerloo line to another line to get the project experience. Fabulous. I got all that experience. When I went to that area, it was the worst performing area across all transport for London. So Marcia did what she normally did, engage, open space, developed empowerment and all this lot. The area came number one. Next one, right, was the group station manager, which is formerly now the area manager. So I kept going, feedback, load of nonsense. Went a second time, feedback, load of nonsense. The 8th time I went again, because I said, you ain't going to beat me. Yeah, I am going to become group station manager. The senior manager at that time, right, said to me, Marcia, you met the benchmark and I should give you the job, but I don't trust you. Now I had two options. I could have taken them to ET Rat and get an apartment in New York. Yeah, and I said, hell no. So I stayed here and fought. On the 10th time I've given the job. So I picked up a secondment and I then performed my best through my people because I can't achieve nothing on my own. And then I went to interview with this particular person, said that he didn't trust me. And I remember the conversation. Marcia, what did you do like to attain this role? And I looked him in the eye and I said, I did nothing. What I did through that role, I had to prove to the doubters that I could do the role. He bent his head. So on the 10th try, I got the role. Then going forward, I went for performance manager. And luckily, this white man believed in me. So I went for the role, went through the invitation, for the interview. Took 6 months before I knew I got the role. Apparently, the managing director said, right, that Marcia can't manage a big line because at the time the Northern line was the misery line, etc., etc. She can't manage a big line, so I should go on the East London line, which had about 6 stations. And I said to my boss, hell no, I ain't going there. So he stuck out his neck, yeah, and said Marcia's going to stay on the Northern line. So on the performance manager again, the Northern line was, we got 9 lines. Northern line was the bottom. Within the first year, I brought it up to 3rd place in performance. Within the second year, right, as either 1 or 2. So Marcia did well. So for Marcia, I got a mouth on me. If you trod on my toe, I'm going to tell you, you trod on my toe and it hurt. Yeah, because I haven't got time for nonsense. From what we've just heard today on this call, right, wow. And Fiona, if you want me to come down there and slap some people around the head, I'm there for you, girl. So I had a mouth on me and I had no problem in telling them you're talking out of terms, you're being derogatory, right? And you need to, right, back off, rethink and come forward. I was then told I've got the performance manager job and I went back for feedback and I said, what took so long for you to make a decision, right, to run the Northern line? As you know, West Indies, we are aggressive. We're ignorant, we've got no culture, we're drug dealers, we're frauds, and all this lot. And obviously, right, me being very frank and open, right, fitted in the category, right, that I'm aggressive West Indian. So I took note of that, yeah? And I said to them, well, how would you like me to respond? Well, tone it down, come on this. I said, I'll tell you what, do a deal. You stop talking crap, yeah? And I'll treat you with respect. So he said, give me an example. I said, when I went into your meeting the other day, yeah, there were 20 of us and I was the only black female. And this man said, Marcia, go make us a cup of tea, love. And you said, excuse my language, jack shit. So Marcia went and made the cup of tea. Yeah, and I make sure I took my little notepad of what you want, tea, how many sugar, milk. And when I took that notepad into the kitchen and I made the cup of coffee, yeah, there was some sour milk, so I used sour milk in the coffee. Yeah, people wanted sugar. I put salt in the tea and coffee and I put it down and I said, here you are, people, and they say, thank you. So obviously when you start in the meeting, right, nobody's drinking yet and they're talking, right, and somebody said before, right, that when you're talking, right, they wasn't looking at me. So Marcia played fool to catch waves, that's my term, and I shut up. And then all of a sudden I see them pick up the cups and drink it and gimmicks. Marcia, what you done? I said, well, you got sour milk, right, and you've got salt. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, you will, whether you like it or not, treat me with respect. I've done the years, I've done the mileage, and I've improved the performance right through people with encouragement and delegation. You are not going to treat me like a piece of shit. Yeah, now if you have a problem with my race or my neurodiversity, that's not my problem. Suck it up and move on. Consequently, right, oh, Marcia's real scary, right, and that's why it took me a long time to get to general manager. So, Fiona, lovely, you've got this group here. Reach out to us, right? Yeah, we will support you and have a conversation. The one thing we have to do as women, don't be scared. Don't be scared of your conversations. Yeah, for the first time, as I said before, when I went in there and I put salt in milk, that I took a chance. But they realized, right, you can't mess about with people, because at the end of the day, right, somebody said, we got kids, I got home, my husband's going through cancer and all this, so I'm a human damn being. When I come into work, right, and you pay me a good amount of money, respect me, because I'm very, very good, right, at stepping people onto it, and I will disrespect you back, yeah, in a public forum. It has got better over the years, but taking on this new role, right, God, we are so backward in the company, but still, stand up for yourself, don't take crap, have the confidence and courage, yeah, and use your own language, your own tune, right. But Fiona, I'm here for you. If you want me to come down there on my broomstick, it's in my suite, and that's me.
Thank you so much. I wish I had you to speak to me 10 years ago, because one of the things that I'll jump in with was on one of the major projects, and my line manager, I walked into, it was all open plan office, and I walked into the office space. I walked into the office space and I saw this line manager, it was like second or third day in this particular team. And he was shouting, just not shouting, actually arguing. Shouting makes it sound slightly more fun. He was shouting, he was having an argument, and he was really in the face of, so there was no reason as to why he was shouting. There was no misinterpretation as to what I'd seen. But he was having a very one-sided argument in the office, and it was a female black colleague of mine. And, you know, Sonya, you mentioned about otherisms, is all the things that now I look back and I can absolutely call it out for what it was. But early part of the career, I was very just happy to be there. And I remember, this is my direct line manager, that's my colleague, and I pulled my head of department aside and I said, okay, I'm 2 days in, what's going on? What have I signed up for? And I said, A, that's obviously wrong, everything I've just described, but B, no one's reacting, and that tells me it's normal and that this happens regularly, because not one person looked up from their computer to say, yeah, we don't do that. And, you know, you have all these values that you're promoting, you know, in various different ways, but it's not within this team. And at that point, my head of department said to me, Shireen, you can handle him. And at that point, I thought, do you know what? The burden's on me. Because very, very, very naive. And actually, you know, the thing you mentioned about the gaslighting, 100% the burden was put on me. And I took that as a challenge. I was like, that's my job. I need to handle him. And I think, you know, if Marcia, if you were there 10 years ago to say, no, that would have been just enough. And I wrote it out as long as I could write it out. It was one of the most amazing projects. I would have happily have stayed there, been there for a lot longer than I was there for in that particular team for 18 months, doing really impactful work. So I loved every day of the delivery, but I was absolutely ripping my hair out every time I was going into the office, because he was like this with that colleague, and I knew it was a certain point that he'd be like that with me. And it happened, you know, a few months after she left, and then I was the new outlet, I guess, for whatever reason. And it was all very weird. And the few things that he pulled me up on, I have endometriosis, and just kind of very loose details. It's a gynecological issue, all the pain that you can imagine, all the symptoms you can imagine. It's not fun. It's very debilitating. It's probably about as much as you need to go into for here. I've been passionate about letting people know, because I feel like if I need to work from home or if I need to be off sick, I want to tell you why, because of all the bureaucracy, all the stuff that we have to map into, and HR is always sold as the the kind of evil of the office. I've been a real believer that HR is there to support me as the individual as well as the company, and I've always kind of maintained that faith and that hope. And so they knew about this already, but this particular line manager, to get something, he couldn't get me on performance, but one of the things he could get me on was sickness. Gaslit me throughout this whole journey, because I found out at the end that there actually was no issue, but because I didn't feel comfortable to call it out and nobody else did, I kind of went on this roller coaster of constantly meeting with HR, constantly meeting with him. He was telling me off about my sickness. When I reiterated the endo, he said to me, "Oh, I've never had any sick days." And I was like, "But you've not got an underlying health condition, bloody hell!" And if anyone knows me, when I'm on fire, I'm on fire. So if I have the odd day where I don't feel like it, but everyone knows that's kind of few and far between. But it's the guilt that's associated with it. So it's all this otherism. You're made to feel guilty for being a female. You're made to feel guilty, and even with endometriosis, 1 in 10 women, 1 in 10 people with a womb have endometriosis. That's a lot of people. And so when you're made to feel separate and secret and otherized, it's really hard for you to call these things out. And and that's why I kind of lent on your comment, Marcia. Like if someone had told me, be courageous, call it out, say it for what it is, stand up for yourself, I absolutely would have. And I think I'm glad those negative experiences happened, because it's where I am today. And I joined another major project, but then soon after I went on a sabbatical, took a year off, because actually I was genuinely at the point of burnout, and I thought, I can't do this. It's a lot when you work in the sectors that we work in. They're very demanding, but when you're purpose driven and impact driven, then you want to do it. But when you are not supported in your well-being, you're not supported with the networks, you are not given that psychological safety, how can I be expected to keep delivering at that same capacity? And that's what I've learned about myself, and that's why the work that I take up now gives me the whole story and the whole Shireen. But I had to learn that the hard way. I genuinely, went through burnout. I took 6 weeks that ended up being 12 months. I went traveling and had a really fun time, but actually I was just reevaluating a lot of stuff and trying to work out, well, what do I want from work, or what do I want from my career, and actually just getting back to nature and really just human stuff, that when you're stuck in a big office, a big tower, and it's just work, home, you're not given that extra opportunity. So that's my career low, but I've hopefully doing something good with that negative experience to help other people to call it out, to know what an ally is, to find the right allies, because they are there. And I think that brings us nicely onto that question around, what is allyship? What does it mean to you, firstly? When you didn't have an ally, when would you have liked to have had an ally, and what capacity could that person have been an ally?
So I kind of just wanted to sort of connect back, and it does connect to allyship actually, but that sort of broader conversation about otherness and thinking about sameness as well. And kind of one of the things I do want to say, I think it's important to be said, is that, and we've talked a lot about white males, I've mentioned it as well, because it's really difficult when you're in an organisation, and actually when you look around, up and beyond, you are other, and there is a lot of sameness, and you are not part of the sameness. But I've had some really great allies that have been part of the sameness gang. So I've had some brilliant white males who've been fantastic advocates and champions for me. They probably needed help to be great allies for me. I've probably had to, probably not as much as putting salt in their tea or giving them off milk like Marcia, to kind of point out that they probably could be a bit more supportive, or they probably don't realise when they are treating people in a way that is other. But I've certainly had my times where I've had to help those people really see that actually I am being treated differently because I am other, and actually helping those that are part of the sameness recognise that. Quite often, and I know we've all got extreme examples of absolute planks, quite frankly, who, it doesn't matter what you say to them, they're never going to kind of change their views or attitudes. But actually, most people do, when you point out that they're treating you as other. So I've had some fantastic male bosses. Most of my bosses have been male, as it happens. Pretty much without exception, they've all been brilliant. They've all supported me and championed my career. I may have had to have pointed a few things out to them. I may have had to have elbowed my way in a little bit more perhaps than some of my male colleagues, but I think that's an important point to kind of recognise, is supporting them to recognise when they are sort of treating people as others. I also have to sort of call out the fact that even when they're in their own sameness pool, they're competing with each other in their sameness. So actually they've got challenges in there as well, because kind of everybody kind of wants to get on and they want to progress their career. So do I think everybody deliberately kind of uses other to kind of promote their own opportunities? I don't think they do. I just think that they're in the sameness gang, and you don't realise it when you're in the sameness gang, and you're just competing with the sameness. So I just really wanted to make that point, because there's some great allies in the sameness gang. There really are, and I've had some fantastic ones. I have to say that made the difference in my career. So I think it's just a nice segue into that next question, really.
There's a couple of things there. So for me, I used to always think it was all about your intentions, and I thought you can always be really sympathetic to people. It's always about your intentions. And then the more kind of educated in the space and the more confident I am in the experiences that I've had and what was right, what wasn't right. And certainly early on in my career, I didn't know what was appropriate. And so comments and ways of being, you just kind of put up with it for many different reasons. So not just being a Muslim from Pakistani heritage, but all of the other reasons, all the layers that make me a human being. I thought that's just how we are with people. And it's only when I've realized more about processes and governance and life and just being confident that I can now say, oh no, that was wrong. And I wish I could go back to do it. But I used to be kind of very intention driven. And it's with that education, I say, actually, your intentions are not negated by your impact. And so we do all have to collectively take accountability and ownership of our impact. But I completely take your point around there's like groupthink and there's loads of like terms around it, but I really like the sameness gang. I'm going to totally steal that for my training and whatnot, because that's really well, I think. Yeah. Because we do, like, it doesn't matter what group you're from or however you identify yourself. I do think when there's like too much of anyone, then you're not allowing for those other voices. And now we've got a very mixed agenda where people feel comfortable talking about the menopause, for example, in the workplace was never really something that you would talk about. Even in families, you wouldn't necessarily talk about it to your mum or other females. You wouldn't necessarily have those conversations. But now we're having this quite openly. And so that just gives you an example. I've had conversations with men who are like, tell me more about this, and never would have thought that would be like an open chat to have with people. So just take that as one thing. So completely take your point. There are definitely positives. And Sonya mentioned Ian, who really integral to the work of women in transport. He's the reason why I joined. I've known him for a really long time, and he's been a real advocate, white male, and he'll probably be happy listening to this, because every conversation I have, there's always a spot for him there, because he's a really good example of someone who is willing to learn, willing to evolve in his own mentality and his own descriptions and descriptors of people, but ultimately cares. He gives a crap. And I think if you've got that love in your heart, then you can forgive things, and you also take people on journeys with you. And so he's like, when we describe allyship, I would automatically just think of a blueprint of him. But to open up to the group, yeah, please tell me, what does ally mean to you?
Well, I'd like to put a positive here now, because I think I've been quite sort of negative. So last year when we went to the awards in Manchester, the guy that it's for the TCS&D magazine, so it's like a temperature controlled storage distribution. So there's like a magazine that comes out every month, and they have an award ceremony every year. So Martin, who runs the magazine, I saw him when we got to the awards. I saw him and he introduced himself to me, said hello and everything. And then obviously the award ceremony got going. We won. I had a few beverages. So I was a little tipsy. I'm really sharing here as well, like, this is a little bit embarrassing. Once all the awards had been given out, we all were called to the stage to kind of have a photo of everybody that had won. And obviously, because I was a little bit excited and that kind of thing, I was like, I tried to get the women that had won awards, I'm cringing here now, on stage so we could have a picture of the female winners of the awards. it didn't go down very well. So after the awards, I was like I said, I got up in the morning and I was a bit cringy and thinking, oh my God, I've made an idiot of myself or whatever. So I reached out to Martin and I sort of said, look, I was trying to do something and good, but obviously it didn't kind of come across that way. And fast forward, we've just launched Women in Cold Chain. And so basically he said to me, I totally get what you were trying to do. And he said, let's do it, but we'll do it, obviously, we'll do it this way. So it's been advertised in the first magazine. We've just launched it on LinkedIn. So if you want to join Women in Cold Chain, and we're going to have on the day of the awards, so the awards will be on the night time. During the day, we're going to have speakers and that kind of thing in. So my drunken moment has actually had quite a positive, and obviously meeting Martin and getting to know Martin, he's really he's really into it. We're all so excited about it. So so that's my kind of ally sort of. Yeah, it's been really good. So it's not all bad in my world. So
no, it's amazing. And the power of having an ally, by having that conversation, look at the impact you're now achieving, and is by opening yourself up to say, well, I did a thing, what do you think? Actually you're having like tenfold impact. That's amazing. It's
been good, and it's been and obviously he sort of runs this magazine, so we can get it out there and and have some real traction on it. So
and I think some of the learning from that, Fee, is we don't always get it right in how we call it out, because it comes from a place of sadness, frustration, irritation. You've got all the literature that says that you care about equality, diversity and inclusion, but I don't feel it. And it will come out sometimes, and it might come out because you've had a glass of wine, it might come out because you've just had enough that day, or something's going on at home, it just comes out. But actually, you know what, saying it's the calling it out that makes the difference. It always makes a difference, because there will always be somebody that sits there and goes, but she or he wouldn't have said that if it didn't matter to them, or they wouldn't have done that if it wasn't something that they cared about and thought wasn't right about how we were doing things around here. And then they will find a way, and they'll find the approach that works for the organisation, for them, for the team that you work in. But never, don't lose any sleep over. I could have landed that message better. The main point was, landed the message.
Yeah.
I mean, on that particular point, right, as women, right, because through fear and trying to fit in, right, we always try to talk their language. And the best thing for us women is to be ourselves, being our intent, right? Show a little bit of vulnerability, right? Fiona, you showed your vulnerability, right? That is not negative, right? Because look at the positive that came out of it.
Yeah.
You should big up yourself, girl.
Thank you.
So back on the subject of allyship, I think it's, for me, a great ally, sort of personal, or when you're thinking about sort of allying between networks, so that sort of intersectionality work that we do is being a critical friend as well. So it's not all about cuddles and love-ins, and it's really important that we're quite critical friends and we challenge each other to really think differently, and because there's no two same human beings. If you belong to a particular community, we're not all the same. I've always thought this when I sort of headed up the Women's Network. One of the reasons why I kind of resisted doing it was my story isn't every other woman's story. So I'm going to have to learn loads about women. that was my big fear. I'm going to have to learn so much about women and things I don't know about other women and their experiences. And when am I going to find the time to learn about them? Only just learning about myself. But that's one of the important things that we have to be as allies, is to be a kind of real critical friend, to kind of really support each other in having a much broader church of experiences and knowledge and connections. so that we're kind of forever learning, because you kind of never stop learning about other human beings. We are fascinating, are we not? You know, so I think that's really important, and find yourself a Marcia for a personal one. I certainly think, you know, the big up to Sonya right at the beginning of the call, that's so important, you know, reminding people how valuable, it's back to the recognition piece right at the start of the conversation, reminding people of how valuable their contribution is, how much others take from that contribution is really, really important. So when you've got a Marcia in your corner as an ally, as a personal ally, whether that's a mentor or a sponsor or whatever, part of their job is to kind of really keep bigging you up all the time, so that you can keep having the courage to do the work that you do, because it does take a bit of courage to keep at it. Perseverance has been the word that's come up a lot. Perseverance is, you know, it's facing off the resistance with courage, isn't it? You know, it's chipping at that coal face of something that's quite difficult, but knowing that it's worth it, because it's the right thing to do. But it does take courage, and you need somebody that's constantly telling you, and it's the right thing, even if you don't always get it right. What you're doing is the right thing. So I think find yourself a Marcia as well is definitely my advice to a personal ally.
I think just to build up on some of those points, I think something that's key on, you know, being an ally is actually taking action. I think sometimes people think an ally is just someone who understands what the issue is or what underrepresented groups go through. But I think the key thing for me of a good ally is someone who's actually willing to put themselves forward and actually see the change that they would like to see. And I think a point that Mel, you certainly mentioned, is almost also the people who it's almost, you know, you can't be what you can't see. So it's almost ensuring that if you are, say, a woman in a senior position, that you're almost, you know, trying to bring the people, the next generation, being an ally for them, and I think that's really important, and it ties in with everything in terms of the recognition piece and all those kind of points. And I guess I have been fortunate in my organization, because I have seen quite early on senior women who've kind of managed to progress within the industry. I think a point that hasn't been touched on as well yet is just the importance for allies also in your personal life. I feel like that's also very, very important. And I think when I know many of you on the call, you know, you're juggling lots of kind of responsibilities, and I feel like you know, personally, without having those allies in my personal life, be it my husband, be it, you know, family members, I think I would have really struggled to kind of progress. And I feel like it's very important that you have that almost cheering on in your personal life as well. And I think that's really important. And I think just on some of the characteristics of a good ally, I think it's almost also standing up in front of issues and changes and kind of taking those risks. And I think those are the good allies that I've seen. So, and yeah, there are many. I mean, Mel, you mentioned a little bit about, you know, white male and having allies who have been men. I think they can sometimes be the greatest allies, especially once they understand the issues. So yeah, I think there's lots that allies can do, and sometimes they underestimate their power. So I think sometimes it does take people kind of calling them out and saying, actually, that's made a big difference for, you know, what I'm trying to achieve.
I think it's really well considered, and you're absolutely right about touching on the allies in all of our lives, you know, personal and professional, because for me, I felt there's such fluidity. There isn't really that personal life and professional life anymore. It's kind of all just one big lump of stuff that we're just getting through each day, right? And if you find that you are thriving in one area and then you're up against a wall in the other, there's no way that you can feel fulfilled. And so I know personally, like, you know, my husband and I are both equally ambitious and equally have the drive for good, him in his capacity and mine in mine. We work in two very different sectors, but two sectors that are very bound by governance and doing the right thing, and are really just full of accountability. And so if you didn't have each other's back and understanding that, there's a real risk there, I think. And then you don't have to work in an environment that's equally kind of like quite heavy on that stuff to feel that. But even just things like, you know, picking up the kid and making sure everyone's happy and healthy, make sure the heating's on, like really simple stuff. But if you don't have that, then actually just the whole day goes out of kilter. And we need to be kind to ourselves, I think, and allies. For me, an ally provides that full opportunity to take a stock of your whole life, because we know that our assets are, you know, it's yourself. Yourself is your greatest asset, and how can we look after that? You know, Marwa, you picked on something around being an active ally, and it's great to say that we support stuff. And I've been doing a lot of reading around race, and actually the one of the texts I've been reading very recently just picked up, it's everything you already know about your own racism and how to do better. Women, you would have seen this all over LinkedIn, and it's quite like, when you read the title, it's a bit like wowzers, but essentially what it's saying here is we need to be active, and it's not good enough to say, oh, but I'm not racist. But it's like, well, what are you doing? You have to actively be an anti-racist. If you see those things, you need to call them out. And I know in this environment that might sound really obvious, because you'd like to think if you saw a thing happening, you'd call it out. But actually, we're very complicit. And so I love the fact that we're talking a lot about active allies. It's not good enough just to say, oh, do you know what? I don't see race, or I don't see gender, I just see professionals.
And I think it's also important that, I guess, when we think about the workplace, that the companies are kind of actively trying to allow employees to have that time to engage. I mean, there's certain programs. I mean, Bechtel's doing Mark dialogue training, you know, which is men advocating real change. And then you're into smaller cohorts, and you go through this training program where it's all about sharing experiences. And there's been so many people that I've come across that said, oh, actually, by you sharing this experience, I want to be an ally now. I understand what you've been through, or what women go through. And I think that's kind of the responsibility, I think, is creating that, I guess, situation to allow those discussions to even happen. Because in such a fast-paced industry, you know, it's not always something that is there.
I love what you're saying around what the actual workplace is doing. And there's so much around lived experience that, and that's what we hope for this podcast, is in future podcasts we'll go really deep into certain lived experience, like around grief and trauma and just stuff that you wouldn't talk about in the workplace. And I feel, and this is credit to Sonya actually, and to Women in Transport, for allowing this platform, because we want to have these really real conversations where we say, I'm a person, a thing's happened. If you understand the thing, then you might see me in a slightly different light. And we don't often have that in the workplace. And Fee, to your point around, you know, the angry lesbian thing, like that's really horrible stuff to go through. But to be able to speak about that openly and say, this is how it affected me, maybe we don't speak to each other like that, then hopefully people might slowly start learning stuff. So
my part for allies is, the most important ally is your family. Because if you don't have your family right, you're going to crash no matter what you have, right? Because you live with them day in, day out, and they can see the inner you and the true you. So they're extremely important. Your partners, whatever it is. The allies for me, right, I'm working with the staff network group, and particularly about race. So the LBT is doing fabulous. The women's network is doing fabulous. The race one I have an issue with. The only time we're collaborative, like when we beat up white people. That's truthful. The only time in the race, S&G, we're collaborative is when we beat up the white people. We have to have the courage, and that's where I'm creating the allyship, to talk about how do we build the barriers, and see the worth right across the piece in that category, right? So therefore, when we do talk as a collegiate, the white people are not saying, oh, bloody hell, they're not fighting each other. Oh God, we better stand up and take notice, because at the moment they're thinking, when they get together, leave them, right? Because we don't have to pay lip service, right? Let them fight. So that's the allyship that I'm working on, right? And with the staff network group, they do have their point of call, right? You know, sharing sensitive things, menopause, neurodiversity, ADHD, whatever it wants to be. But we've got to utilize them, right, and the power and the influence they have, right, to making positive action, and to be seen to making positive action, where is tangibility? So when my first year, I want to go out on my front line, right? I've got 11,000 staff which I'm responsible, and I want to feel it and I want to hear it. Yeah, and I want them to come to me, right, Marcia, I'm hearing, I'm feeling all this, this is what I want to do. We're not there yet. And that's what we need to start doing, right? Supporting, influencing, right, but supporting our network groups who actually come out and, you know, make change. Yes.
Thank you. Hadil, I'm going to come to you, and then Sonya, if you have the last word on allyship, please.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything everyone said. Mainly about, you know, having friends at work as well. I think, yeah, the way I look at it is an ally. It's not really like a colleague, it's more of a friend, you know, where you have like a bond with, you have a very like close relationship with, as well as like family, like, which is like outside of work, having that support there. And
yeah, I think mine brings it full circle actually back to Mel, and that I love the phrase the sameness gang because I can relate to that in that most of the managers I've had through my career were white men, and they were actually amazing managers, hugely supportive, and brilliant leaders in their own right. And I certainly wouldn't have had the career I've had without that support. And it's interesting that over the 15 years that I've been at Women in Transport, which is crazy to me, what has happened in the last few years is having this gang of male allies in particular who have become this, like, my trusted circle of friends who I never would have met otherwise. So Shireen mentioned Ian, Gary, Neil, Steve, and they're people that I would pick up the phone to. I could have a cry with them if I needed to. They will listen to me. They will be my critical friends. They'll like, I'm struggling with this issue. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. And it's so important actually when you wherever you are, in whatever position you are, to be able to have those really open conversations. And there's not just the men, there's a wide variety now. Shireen and all the Women in Transport volunteers and board members that I've got around me are all active allies in that way. And what I think is important to know is that all of us can actually be an ally for somebody else, because wherever we find ourselves in whatever position, whatever level, there's actually something in our influence that we can do to lend a hand to somebody else, whether that's being a shoulder to cry on, being a listening ear, calling out somebody else's behaviour, just being a friend, giving a LinkedIn recommendation, whatever. There are small ways that we can be allies to others, and just by showing a bit of kindness. So yeah, that's what it means to me, and that's what I hope that I do for those that are in my network and those that I meet as well along the way.
Absolutely, thank you. And for our last question, we can do this as a bit of a quick fire round. We've discussed so much today, and thank you so much for sharing your stories, being really open and honest, authentic, and bringing your true selves to, you know, what are emotive topics. And we want to really, you know, unpick and unpack what some of this might mean, and we'll go into detail in further podcasts for Women in Transport. But certainly as an opener, we've touched on career highs, career lows, around belonging, around community, around the value of calling it out. But with all of that, what now? So we know we've got future generations coming through. We want to keep people in the sector. You're already here. What do we do? So what is the hope that we're hoping to throw back out, and the good that we want to achieve from our experiences that other people won't have?
For me, Sonya, you got a big part to play in this. A very big part. I know I keep picking on you, and I do apologize. Well, actually, I don't. Yeah. All of us on this call, yeah, we've been through it. We've lived through it, right? We've gone through the trauma. It's how do we package it, right, and save the young from what we go through. It's how do we do it, right? And it's all of you on this call, right, because you're all leaders.
Completely agree with that. So my sort of thoughts were that we've all got a personal responsibility, small or large, whatever our roles are, whether you're on the start of your career or like me, nearing the end of it, to kind of use your opportunity and influence to kind of just leave it in a better place than it was when you found it. So I think that's really important. I think, again, this is a fantastic example of it, is to provoke really difficult conversations. You know, it is tough, it's quite emotional. I've been quite emotional at points during today to listen to some of those challenges that still exist and that probably will always exist, but our role is to provoke those difficult conversations. So I think that's really important. And like I said, that leaves its legacy. It does. You know, if you think people don't go untouched by the conversations that we have in these rooms, you know, by opening up those conversations, then you're wrong. I mean, I used to just think, you know, if just one person, if it just makes a difference to one person, they feel less isolated, my work here is done. So I just think about the light that you shine, you know, as part of the legacy that you're going to leave, and how you show future generations how they can do that as well. I just think that's what I'd like to leave our future generations with.
Thank you so much.
100%. I think that my hope would be for future generations that they don't have the same battles and those same, you know, exactly the same challenges. Of course, workplace and work will always be challenging, but hopefully that our legacy will be leaving them in a place where they don't have to fight all of these battles, because we've come before them and helped pave the way and created spaces where they feel like they're welcomed and they're included, and transport is this wonderful place to work and has the right culture for them as well. And, you know, I think that we're all in that together.
Yeah, so I totally agree with that. I think it's paying it forward, as they say, you know, as in the next generation. But I guess I want to go the step further in the sense that, because I think the challenges people face changes each generation. So I feel like I guess the advice to the next generation is to kind of, their challenges that they're facing, to then pass on that to the generation after them. And just, I guess, again, bringing this personal side of things, I do think that there's a responsibility for parents and you know, to try and break those stereotypes and take an active role. I know that they say that, you know, starting very young, you know, these days, at how much discussions influence children. So I think that there's several kind of aspects to it, but I think we need to continue to kind of continue the battles, they say, and hopefully creating a better workplace for the future generations.
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone said. I think we all do have a responsibility to make sure that the workplace is like a good and safe space for the future generations. And I also think that I am part of the future generation, because I am like fairly, you know, I just started my career, and like I think I'm very extremely grateful to everyone who's come before me, the old generations, because I think I've been in this role for 2 years and I don't think I've experienced anything like what you guys have experienced. And I think it's also important to acknowledge how far we have come already, hearing all of your experiences. And, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, you only have to look at, you know, the gay rights movement, you know, Black History Month, all those kind of things, you know, keeping it out there is getting better. And I think the key is just to keep going. It's as simple as that, really. Is not, you know, and not to give up, because it's easy to do. I've been there a couple of times where I've thought, what's the point? But you know, today's been fantastic from my point of view anyway. I just think, you know, yeah, I've learned a lot today, to be fair, so thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. With that, I'll bring today's podcast to a close. Thank you for your openness, your authenticity. I know I said that before, but it doesn't, you know, a conversation one-sided isn't helpful. So you've been amazing and just being really real, and also being really hopeful as well. So just thank you so much for your time today.
You've been listening to the Women in Transport podcast. Join us next time as we hear more from the women in our sector Please visit the website for more details on how to become a member of Women in Transport, and remember to like, follow and share this podcast.